We got to talk about the LA riots. We haven't even got to that yet. So I think what's going on, the thing everybody's missing is that why is society going to hell? It's a lot of things, but some of the overlooked things are that the whole society's been constructed around qualities that are classically feminine qualities. Safety, security, convenience, and equality in feeling, right? That's 4 or 5. The whole society is constructed around those things. And that is a disaster for a society. You cannot make all society conform to qualities that are in themselves useful for motherhood and being nurturing, and try to make the super state and the cathedral religion of the society essentially female qualities or feminine qualities. Because it can't function. Because it's not how systems function. There's a role that the nurturing qualities play for the rearing of children, for balancing out masculine qualities within the household. But they cannot be the highest qualities and virtues of a society because, by the way, the society that goes in that direction actually moves away from a virtue ethic and necessarily ends up in a utilitarian and hedonistic ethic. That's where we are. So the feminine qualities, which can be good for a family in certain settings, when they become totalized and universalized for the society, when masculinity and patriarchy become degraded and seen as evil, then you have to enforce and regulate the vices like sloth, ease and convenience, safety and security over truth, over risk and adventurism, convenience over hard work, over learning things and putting in the hard time to do it. That's where we are. A kind of cult that worships equality, that demonizes and punishes anyone that's not a believer in the cult and the enforced lies of radical equalitarianism, safety and security over risk and truth, cowardice over bravery and speaking out. Now, you have to be tactical when you're in the minority about how you speak out. Because when, say, the left in general is in power, you cannot speak out and act as freely as you might like. So it does require some tact. So tact is not the same thing as cowardice, by the way. For example, it would be foolhardy to fly over to Saudi Arabia and immediately start preaching Christianity in the streets. Why? Well, because you're not going to be allowed to even do it. So it's almost futile. Well, but wait a minute, the apostles preached the gospel in Acts and they were persecuted. Yeah. I mean, you have to have wisdom, though, for how and when it's even wise to choose to be persecuted. So being foolhardy is not the same thing as wisely choosing when is the right time to do that. Because in that case, for example, would it be brave to preach the gospel in a place where it is forbidden? Yes, it would be brave. But bravery is not the excess of foolhardiness. This is basic Aristotelian virtue, vice, ethics. Because it will not accomplish anything for me to fly to Saudi Arabia, start to talk for 1 minute, and then within 2 or 3 minutes, the authorities throw me in jail. It accomplishes nothing. I don't actually get the message out to anyone. I don't actually set up a church. I don't actually get anything going. It just puts me in jail. Kind of similar to like if I went to China and I just started immediately preaching on the streets and whatever. Like it wouldn't do anything. They just put you in jail right away. So I would argue that's more of a foolhardy endeavor. It's not really worth it. Your time and effort could be put into, let's say you were, commissioned by the church to actually preach, not just some rando dude. But I mean, you could reach people in China or Saudi Arabia through the internet in a much better way, or by debating Muslims and getting millions of views, versus flying to some place, preaching on the streets, and getting thrown in prison right away. Even though, yeah, it would still perhaps be a sacrifice for Christ. You could argue that. It would be brave, but it also might be foolhardy. That's a tough one, right? For example, there's one place in Acts, to give you an idea of this, that not many people, hardly anyone ever talks about this, but do you know there's a place where the apostles were about to go into, I think it's like Asia or Asia Minor or something, and the Spirit forbade them to do it. Why would the Spirit forbid them to go into a certain place to preach the gospel? Well, we don't know. There could be reasons why that people group was not ready for that. And so in God's infinite wisdom, he saw the hearts of the people over here versus over there. And so, right. So even the Holy Spirit in the book of Acts doesn't command them to go into every single place, you see. And especially when you're an evangelical, right? People are idiotic about this, and they have a zeal without knowledge. And so they think, it's better to just go preach fearlessly on the streets. Well, we don't even know that you are commissioned to do that. So, setting aside all that with the morality or the wisdom in preaching in Saudi Arabia or China. By the way, you may not know this, and I never knew this when I was an idiot evangelical, but now I understand this. One reason that, for example, China would throw you in jail is that they would think you're a spy. And I remember when I was an idiot evangelical, I didn't know anything about that kind of stuff. And I would think, oh, the atheist Chinese government, they're so evil persecuting Christians. Well, I do think they're evil and they do persecute Christianity. But one of the reasons they do that is that the West has had a long history of recruiting and using missionaries as spies. British Empire did it. It's an ancient tactic and technique. So, although I do not agree with the atheist Chinese communist government, they are not foolish for assuming that Western missionaries could likely or probably are spies. That's just the reality of it. And evangelicals are such idiots and so ignorant, they have no knowledge of this. They don't even know.